And it's 23 minutes after 7 here on the AM show. Let's get now and do the AM talk with Roxanne Nelson Dafamapo, who is a Member of Parliament for South Dye. Good morning to you. Thank you for being here. We will tell you what he's been up to on Facebook. We'll deal with that matter, but also a Deputy Information Minister and Member of Parliament for Ofuasi Ayiribi, Kojo Ponkroma. Good morning to you as well.
Morning.
Thanks for being here.
Morning, Roxanne.
Morning, Kojo.
Let's start from how Parliament ended last Friday. There's been a lot of talking points from that particular sitting. You had something to say, which you put on Facebook, because you're not happy with the Minister of Defense, the revelation that there were more minority members on that committee that he appeared than majority. So you could have finished off with that deal right there, the Ghana-US deal.
Yeah, I wish it was so. Now, this is how Parliament works. If a bill or a motion paper from the executive is laid and it's necessary that it's referred to the appropriate committee, the Speaker does that. Now, with the matter in question, the memorandum accompanying the, what do I even call it, the agreement, it was a draft agreement, was laid on Tuesday. And immediately, Speaker referred it to a joint committee on defense and constitutional, legal and parliamentary affairs. And so Tuesday evening, I got a message that we were to meet the next day at 9 a.m. to listen to the minister and his generals and lieutenants from the army. So, as the minority, we were interested in the matter. So we actually attended in our numbers. When we got there were just about 4 persons from the majority side.
From both
both committees.
Okay.
So the meeting didn't proceed at 9 until about 11. The chairman was calling his team. They just won't come. So eventually, about 10 of them came. And so we started. Now, 3 of our members join us, friends in Parliament. You can have other members who can come and listen.
Observing the sitting?
No, in fact, participate.
Oh, okay.
But we call them friends of the committee. So the Honorable Akando came as a friend. The Honorable Dr. Zaneto Rollins came as a friend. Then the Honorable Eric Osayusu came as a friend from the minority side to join as the substantive members of the committee. So in actual fact, we were about 16.
Minority members?
Yes, we were about 16. What was the business? The business was for us to hear the minister explain the reasons why the agreement contains such terms.
This was the first time you were seeing the agreements?
No, that's the first time. So the explanations took us from about 11:30 a.m. till about 9 p.m. because we insisted on going clause by clause, article by article. It contained 19 articles, with some articles containing as many as 11 sub-clauses. So it was a lot.
So at this point, how many majority members were on this committee? Would you recall?
On the record, there were 10.
Okay.
But they were going in and out. Even at a point, the minister had to leave for about 4 hours. Apparently, he came to hold a press conference and came back. So when we're done after 9 p.m., the decision was that we will meet as a committee now to now deliberate on the matters that we have heard from the army tell us. And this was to have been done the next day, Thursday.
So as a joint committee?
As a joint committee.
Okay.
So we dispersed and I got home around 10 p.m. Then Thursday, the next day, we were expecting that the alert will come, There was no alert. Honestly, I never got the impression that this was to be taken the next day, Friday, because there was no sense of urgency about it. None were not told that.
But at the committee level, you did make some changes to it.
No.
You made amendments.
No. The minister made it categorical that this was not an agreement as a committee of parliament we could tinker with. We can't touch it.
So as you were looking at clause by clause, exactly what were you doing?
Exactly my point. So I asked him, so what is our business? Instead, we are supposed to just look at it and approve.
Or reject.
Yes. Those were our powers. So the rejection or the approval would have been done minus their presence. That's the way it's supposed to be.
The following day.
The following day. We were now to meet and decide whether the terms as contained in the agreement were in the greater interest of the generality of our people or not. If it is, we okay it. If it is not, we reject. Now, nothing happens on Thursday. Then I got wind of I got information around 12 o'clock that a certain report has been done.
On Friday?
No.
On Thursday?
On Thursday.
Okay.
That a report has been prepared, and I said, what? Because you see, on Thursday on the order paper, it was stated on the order paper that the report from the committee will be laid. So I became alarmed because we hadn't met as a committee to do further deliberations and take a decision. So I went to the chairman. So, you know, Roxy, you know how things work in this house. The fact that it's been stated on the order paper that it will be laid on Thursday doesn't mean it's ready, so don't worry.
This is chairman of your committee?
This is chairman of my committee, the joint committee, the Honorable State Champion. So indeed, we went back, and then he brought a draft. I said, no, chairman, you can't do this. We haven't met as a committee yet. So why do you prepare a report suggesting that we have taken a decision? Then so Roxy, then I said, no, let's do the appropriate thing. I insisted until my rankings came. Then they looked at it. They said, no, it does not. It was not reflective of the things we had even raised when the minister and his generals came.
So I guess this is where you suggested that then it should be a majority report.
Yes.
Okay.
You understand? Then we said that no. If you insist that this is your report, even though we had not met, you sat overnight, you and the clerks, to prepare this, I will not be associated with it. But my rankings decided that, well, if he insists, then it is their decision. Because you see...
How is that? I mean,
yes.
I don't know.
You see, the argument in the public domain... Hold on. The argument in the public domain now is that because we were in the majority, we took the decision. When indeed no such decision was taken. Why? Why do you think we couldn't have killed it? Because there was never an opportunity for us.
So why didn't you talk about it? We didn't hear the minority say any of these.
Why? We did. Do you know how long it took us from Friday morning, from about 10 a.m. We haggled over the contents of this report until about 4 p.m. The chairman stood his ground.
We didn't see you organize any press conference to say that.
Oh,
the other side of the house, they are not sticking to the rules of the house.
We raised it. If you read what
you didn't speak to the public about it.
I did. Indeed, I am on record to have stormed out of the meeting on Wednesday to raise these matters.
No, because you
those,
said...
Hold on.
You said
to raise those preliminary matters.
Okay, so let's
preliminary matters.
Let's bring you in the conversation. I'll come back to you.
Hold on.
This is your last 30 seconds.
Yes,
to finish
my last 30 seconds is to the effect that the manner the agreement will travel to Parliament, the processes that it went through to get a certain report concocted, laid and approved, were all done not in accordance with the procedure and the laws governing how we do
Okay,
things.
I'll come back to, so what do you intend to do? What happens
And if
next?
there's something that is done without recourse to the laws of this country, there's a very, very honorable house where you go and get it quashed. Those are the courts.
Of course, that's all you say.
The minority has been mischievous from day one. And all that they are doing is plain mischief for the public gallery.
Kwejo, if anybody has been mischievous, it has been you and your government.
Let's hear him also make his point.
You deny me opportunity to vote on a matter that I'm a member of.
Can I speak?
Let's hear him land.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because what they've been doing is coming up with various claims and throwing them up in the air. When you begin to interrogate those claims, they don't stand on.
But you're not a member of either of the
I'm
committees.
a member of the Constitutional and Legal
So
Committee.
you were part of this.
I was there at the committee meeting.
Oh.
I was one of the very first people to be at the committee meeting. Indeed, they outnumbered us at the committee meeting. And that's why when he said our mandate was to approve, he deliberately left out or reject, which is why I brought it in.
No, I didn't
When,
deliberately.
well, he didn't say it. I had to bring it in. When a matter is brought to Parliament, yes, it's right, it's referred to a committee or joint committees to work on them. The committee has the mandate to approve or to reject it. And then they bring their report to the House and inform the entire House that when we met at committee, this is the position that we took. And then they urge the House to endorse their decision. So if you go to a committee meeting and your members outnumber even the majority, technically at that meeting you constitute the majority of members there, and you have every right whatsoever to reject and come to the floor and make a case for why we should reject the committee's, or why we should accept the committee's report, which is to reject the agreement. They never did that. They came back onto the floor of the House, and even when they were given opportunity to speak.
But can I ask
Wrong.
you, were you
Wrong.
supposed to take that decision
May I?
at that
Exactly.
joint
May I?
committee
May I?
meeting, first of all?
Yes, we were supposed to take the decision at that committee meeting because that was the essence for which it was sent to the committee. I was a member of the committee.
So there was a vote.
I'm coming, and let me explain. I was a member of the committee. After about 2 hours into the committee meeting, I rose up and went to the chairman and explained to the chairman that I had to leave to attend to another matter, the Right to Information Bill, which was to be brought to Parliament. And therefore, having read the document, I share with him my view that I'm voting for this. My understanding is that at the end of the day, they took a decision, and then they brought it to the floor.
No decision was ever
Be
taken.
that as it
Kwejo,
may,
you
if
were not
claim-
there.
Don't worry.
You were not there.
Don't worry. If you
It
claim,
is
may
so
I,
illogical.
may
That's why I wrote
may I,
that
may I,
you cannot
may I,
expect. They knew
may I.
that
You have
they
had
want
about
to vote.
5 minutes to
Yes.
explain your view.
So
May I?
is it fair to
May
go
I?
with his
May
accounts
I?
then, since
No,
you didn't sit
no,
through the
no,
entire
You didn't
session?
sit through.
And,
It didn't
and
sit
here's
through.
where the test is. When you came onto the floor and you had an opportunity, you did not rise up on the floor and object that, Mr. Speaker, and check the records. Never objected that, Mr. Speaker, a decision was never taken at committee. Never. They never said that.
We said
What
so.
they said was that the decision was
We said
taken
so.
by the majority. And in fact, they moved for an amendment of the report on the floor of the House. And when they moved for the amendment that they moved for was that, Mr. Speaker, the decision was taken by the majority, not us. Now, why, if what you are saying is a matter of fact, when you have the opportunity to speak to it on the floor of the House, why wouldn't you go on Hansard, go on the record and say that, Mr. Speaker, a decision was not taken at the committee. So this report is alien to us. This report doesn't factor into it our views. You didn't do that. You rather asked for an amendment, that the amendment be that it was the majority that decided. Because what we are all informed was that actually the committee decided at the end to support this.
It is
only
not true.
for the General Secretary of the NDC
Kwejo,
to hold a
it-
press conference
it's a
and after
lie.
that whip his
It's
members in line.
It's a big concussion.
After that, whip his
It's a
members.
big
You would notice
concussion.
that it is only after
No.
Johnson Asiedun Ketia's
No.
press conference
No.
that our friends in the minority then changed their position.
No,
Came
no,
onto
no,
the floor of the House
no.
to display. Now let me
Kwejo,
also show you a
Let's
few
You
other
let,
things.
let, let
You
him
left.
land. I'll
Let
come
me show
to you
you-
with the rules.
Let
yeah.
me show you a few other things. For example, the rules of the House say that when you have a matter, you raise it. Mr. Speaker determines. The conduct of Mr. Speaker may not be questioned except by substantive motion. Our friends have now adopted a new attitude that even when Mr. Speaker rules, they will drum, they will stand up and shout and sing, obstruct the House. You know why they are doing that? For the cameras upstairs. So that people will watch at home and think that something exciting is going on in the House. Now let me take you finally to
Where
the
are you
substantive
getting this from?
agreement. Because we are seeing it in the House. The substantive agreement
And
itself
this is the last point.
is no
Why are you in
different
opposition?
from the
Do you know the kind of
agreement-
things you brought to
It's no
Parliament?
different from the agreement that they signed in 2015 and never brought to Parliament.
It is not
They
true.
signed in 1998 and never brought
It
to
is not
Parliament.
true.
Indeed, some of us are urging government that because those agreements still exist and are still in force, we should bring it to Parliament and ratify those ones too. And let Ghanaians see how different that is from this one. Because in essence, if in 98 and 2015, this agreement never caused the establishment of a base, it never sold out our sovereignty, how come in 2017 or 2018? When, if you listen to Yab Wabea Samuels, if you listen
Does it
to,
also make the
if
terms
you-
right
no,
for us? If we're not
I-
happy
we
about
have not
about the
seen-
term,
we have not
then
seen,
couldn't
we have not seen, we didn't see anything wrong with it. We don't see anything wrong with it. That's why we will not oppose. And finally, if you listen to Yabuabia Samuel's debate, he reads word for word what was in those agreements and what is in this agreement. And the words don't change.
Let's go back to the floor of Parliament. Yes. Indeed, if you didn't take part, if something went wrong at the committee level, you could have said it on the floor of Parliament.
There are a lot of things that happen in Parliament in camera. When I disagree particularly, including my ranking, the Honorable James Agalga, the chairman told us that he had to go and consult the leader of government business, the Honorable Chairman Sabunsu. So we're called into another conclave. It lasted for almost 2 hours. They insisted that they will not allow our views to be incorporated. So
how is that possible?
It is possible. He's the chairman. He says he will not allow you. It's as simple as that. Look, they cooked the report overnight.
But now, I know the minority. You would have quickly organized a press conference and inform the public what is happening to you.
You see, we were so averse to the approval of this. And so we decided that if indeed they want to, because we discovered that it is something they are doing under a certain certificate of urgency. Even then, they didn't tell us. Because the person moving the motion would have stated that we want the House to consider this under a certificate of urgency. Then the committee will go and decide whether indeed it should be so or not.
That is not true.
Please.
That is not true.
Check.
That is not true.
Kwejo, check.
This, first of all, is not a bill. Mama, we check from
from
any member of Parliament.
So you see,
bills are the ones that are brought on the certificate.
We don't even know what they brought to Parliament.
They brought a draft agreement. You said it a few minutes ago.
Do you ratify a draft agreement?
How do you call a draft agreement a bill?
Exactly.
Please, Roxanne.
So you see, they just bulldoze their way through with using their numbers. Because the law is very clear that before you bring a treaty of that nature for ratification, sign. You don't sign. You come to Parliament.
So then you should have boycotted the sitting in the first place.
I agree. I came out. I raised the issues. But you see, when you boycott, they will go back and say that, you didn't participate, so your view should not be incorporated. They did it to us. So we're alert. Mama V, it doesn't make sense that I will dominate you at the committee level. I am against approving this.
Because you sought to play mischief.
Please, it is, please.
And when it doesn't make sense that I will dominate you,
you
see
I am against.
And now vote as a minority.
So now this agreement has been ratified.
It's not an agreement. What we have done.
So what is it? What is it?
Parliament has given approval.
To what?
That the executive can go ahead and sign this agreement.
How?
Let me explain
to you something.
Has it been signed? Has it been signed?
How does the Parliament ask executive to go and sign an agreement?
Let me answer your question.
It is never
go
done.
to Article 75(2) of our Constitution.
You understand? It is never done.
There are
you
two
sign
ways
before you come.
Can I speak?
You can.
There are two ways in which you do this, and there's precedent. Precedent in instances where you come to Parliament and show the draft agreement. Because, for example, when you have agreements in which there are tax waivers, the executive cannot sit in the Flagstaff House and grant tax waivers or sign them off. And so there are ways in which you come to Parliament and say, this is what I intend to sign. Have a look at it, especially in areas where you have the powers, not the executive.
Kwejo,
if you approve,
the minister said he was
sign.
proceeding to Parliament under Article 75.
Gentlemen, you are aware that there's precedent in which you come to Parliament and bring draft agreement for Parliament to approve, and then you go and sign.
And what precedent
there's
is that?
also the Article 75(2). If
what
you just let me
precedent
explain.
is that?
There's also the Article 75(2) option in which you sign and you bring to Parliament. Let me show you what they used to do. Because they wanted to breach Article 75(2).
I'm very sad that Parliament has been
Because they
bastardized
wanted
by
to
the
breach
executive.
Article 75(2), what they always did in the past was that they would treat these ones as note verbals, confidential note verbals between the two countries. Now, you know, an agreement can be when I make a point and you agree. It may not necessarily be one document on which we are signing. So what they used to do was that they would do one agreement from the Americans, then they will respond, one letter from the Americans, they will respond. The two constituting an agreement, and they will never lay it in Parliament.
It is legitimate.
That is how come under
it is
the
legitimate
1998 agreement,
public business
they never
like
brought it to Parliament.
It is legitimate.
The 2015 agreement, they never brought it to Parliament. Now, the thing that he says is
but there's no law against that.
There is.
Exactly.
There is.
Now,
there is.
Now they came because of the Supreme Court decision.
Exactly my point.
Exactly my point.
So it is fair to say when they were doing it, at least Supreme Court had not given any decision.
It was against the law.
Which law?
Right from. It was against Article 75(2).
But until the Supreme Court makes that decision, you couldn't have just...
Check from any lawyer. Check from any lawyer. The law is not when the Supreme Court says it. If it is unconstitutional ab initio, it is unconstitutional. The Supreme Court only draws your attention to the fact that this is unconstitutional. They have done it in times past. Now, when we went to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court affirmed our position that this is unconstitutional, that is why we said that in this instance, we are going to bring it to Parliament. That is why Gitmo 2, after they had hidden it, we brought it to Parliament.
How was it hidden?
Now we are going to bring their 2015 agreement which they signed. And you see how word for word it does not
do you
change
bring an
from
agreement that has elapsed?
I want us to take a little breather here. I will leave you to just take a sip. I want to engage Dr. RASHEED Draman, who is the Executive Director of the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. He monitors a lot of the work done in Parliament, and he certainly monitored this. And we want to get his views of how things unfolded in Parliament. Good morning to you, sir, if you can hear me. Thank you for your time.
Good morning.
Dr. Draman, you monitored what happened in Parliament. We've been talking about the rules of the House. And if you listened from the beginning, I hope that you did, from the conversations at the committee level and then to the main House. Did anything go wrong from what you monitored?
Thank you very much for having me. I didn't listen to the conversation from the beginning. I heard parts of the discussion between the Deputy Minister and the Honorable Member. You know, just looking at this and putting things in perspective, I get quite worried about the way our parliamentary democracy is unfolding in this country. I mean, for me, simply put, if you flip the table right now and you have the NDC in majority and the MPP in minority, you are most likely to see, I mean, this same thing playing out. It's quite regrettable that at the end of the day, we are in a situation where if there are issues of national importance, we don't get the full level of discussion that we need before such important issues are passed by Parliament. We have seen a lot of walkouts by the minority, including on this particular occasion, and I find that quite disturbing, because what it tells us is, one, either the political space for discussion in Parliament in this country is shrinking, or the minority, I think, is overdoing some of these things. And either way, I think the verdict on our democracy is not quite good.
So let's go back to some of the things that we've heard, particularly from Honorable Roxanne Nelson Dafamako. The fact that there was a joint committee meeting and they didn't reach an agreement, at least from his accounts. But we see this agreement come to the main floor of Parliament, and it sounds like there was a breach of at least some of the rules here.
Well, I don't know what the minority group expects, except that, you know, in this particular case, because this is one of the few committees that is chaired by the minority, and in that
this is the Defense Committee and then the Constitutional. So these are, you have majority members chairing both committees.
Just that they had more members.
Yes, I thought you were talking about the Constitutional Legal, but I mean that's fine. The issue is that I think the minority has to always remember that, you know, the basic tenet of parliamentary democracy is that at the end of the day, I mean, they should expect that they would have their say, but the majority would always have its way. And if you go in with this thinking behind your mind, I think you should expect what happened last Friday. For me, the issue is that I think we want to see our minority make its case. We want to see our minority threaten. We want to see our minority use all the tools that are available to them but I think they should always participate. I mean, cutting it short and walking out all the time, I think would not endear them to all of us, because we send them there to serve as a check on the majority, and at all times we want them to stay in the house and have their say, and let the majority have their way, and let Ghanaians be the final arbiters.
Dr. Draman, we'll bring Kojo Oponkoma in, and then Mr. Dapamopo will also come in. Kojo.
It is our view that the minority does these things when they lose the argument. Then they come up with these dramatics. And that is why you realize that even the things that my very good friend Roxanne is claiming here in the studio, when they had the opportunity to put it on the record of Hansard, they never made mention of it. They are now saying it here in the studio. Number two, Dr. Draman makes the point that it appears that the space for discussion is being crowded out. You know why it's happening? The same reason. They seek to just play politics with everything. The reason for which we went to Parliament in the first place with this deal and this transaction was to get an opportunity to have a conversation in the national interest. And that's why Dominic Nitu makes the point that it had been in his ministry for months, no problem. It had gone to the cabinet secretariat, no problem. The moment we took it to Parliament and laid it, and it started getting to members to get ready for this conversation, then you realized what they did with it, to literally stampede everything, to prejudice the public mind, and
isn't that a normal game that you play? It's a normal game that you play. Documents are leaked.
No, that's not a leak I'm talking about. You had minority members of Parliament publishing these documents on their Facebook pages and creating a certain impression that there was something untoward. And many of them did not even know that a lot of these clauses had been lifted from their 2015 and 1998 agreements. Indeed, you had some of them subsequently going on record to say that, we didn't know that Ghana had a prior agreement with the Americans in the same space. Finally, we are here in this country. We are going to watch, and I ask you to watch and see, if indeed we are going to set up a military base here, if indeed we are going to have U.S. troops come and deploy and stay here with us, if indeed we are going to have Americans come and take up facilities in perpetuity and do the things they are claiming, for which reason they've caused this brouhaha. And if indeed those things do not happen, we would ask you to join us in calling them out, that this was purely politics. Because when they signed it in the past, those things didn't happen. They shouldn't claim today that those things will happen when we renew these agreements.
Dr. Draman, quickly, and then I'll let now Mr. Dapama. I want if Dr. Draman,
if you can respond.
Yes. Sorry. Mamavi, what's the question?
No, I thought you were monitoring what Kojo was saying, but please let me let.
Yes. I'm monitoring what Kojo is saying, and I think that I want to say that, look, in the past, most of these things did not come to Parliament. In the past, most of these things were done in a way that we didn't like as a country. I think the majority today must be applauded for all the steps that they have taken for bringing this to the public domain, so that debates and discussions can take place and so on. But I think in doing that, they should have gone the full length in making sure that, let all the discussion take place, let all the debate take place. And at the end of the day, I believe the superior argument would have won. And if they had, as they believe, indeed, that there is nothing untoward and so on, they should have just allowed the full length of discussion to take place. And then I think that way we would all be satisfied that we have been properly represented.
Okay, all right. Dr. Draman, just hang in there for me. You wanted to make a point.
Yes, I am a bit surprised about Doctor's position. Such an important matter of state. You lay it on Tuesday, you stampede us to passing it on Friday. What sort of, how constricted state?
Is that entirely new? Isn't that a practice?
Hold on. You want to be credited for doing this. And I am saying that what you have done is unacceptable.
Why didn't you bring
Hold on, Kwejo, please. That the both agreements are not even the same. Indeed, in your own memo to Parliament, you alluded to the fact that the agreement signed in 2015 had elapsed. if an agreement had elapsed.
Elapse doesn't mean it's not the same.
What are you saying?
Elapse doesn't mean it's
What
not
are
the
you
same.
saying?
We should
I
have
am-
So
clause
I
for
am
can
clause.
can you
I
make
am
Clause for
making-
clause.
please,
can you
How this is
I have
can
very
you
small
can you
time.
make the point so
Yes.
that Dr. Draman can
An
equally
agreement
respond?
that has elapsed, there's no need for you to renew. You enter into a fresh agreement. That's number one. Number two, you don't stampede us into doing this in 2 days. So the procedure to Parliament wrongful, the procedure to deliberating on the matter wrongfully adopted, the procedure to laying the report and debating it and approving it wrongful. Because they use their numbers to ensure that.
And
it was
I think
done.
what I said was, isn't this one of the common practices of the House?
So, Mama
seen
V,
this
so
happen.
Mama V, when I complain, you should know that I did complain. I did pointed out the errors, but they used their numbers to ignore it and
But
ensure
Dr.
that it
Draman
was done.
said, so still make your point, but stay in the House.
Why? We registered our protestation by walking out. We said that we will not participate
They knew they couldn't win the
in this.
debate.
Why? Which debate?
They knew they couldn't win
Which
the
debate?
Because if you listen to
Which
Yabuabea
debate?
Samoa, we started reading clause for clause.
Which
what
debate?
was in the 2015
Oh,
agreement.
please.
Play
Which
back your
debate?
tapes. Play back your tapes
You have
for all your
decided that.
viewers.
Look, even
Play
the,
back your
we,
tapes.
we told you that take the draft agreement back, go and sign it and bring it. My power is to approve of it and or reject it. But now you are asking me to look at an agreement that I cannot even make amendments. And yet you want me to look at
So
it.
reject it if you think there's something
yes,
wrong with it.
and you not grant the
Don't
space
leave
for
the
me
chamber.
to debate and
Don't leave.
reject it.
You had space. Your
Dr.
minority
Dr.
leader
Draman.
was on his feet for
Why?
17 minutes.
Yes, he was
Doc-
telling you
You
that
didn't have
what
space
you
to
were
debate
doing
it.
was wrong.
Dr.
Roxy,
Draman is
please.
joining us via
so-
Skype.
brother,
I want to move
participate.
ahead. I want to move ahead. So, Dr. Draman, I just want to ask, if procedures, rules were breached in
I
this
respect you,
case,
I love you.
as
And I respect you
the
as well, but
minority
this is
is
untoward.
making
No.
us understand, what can be done?
Procedural impropriety
It's
all the
already
way.
passed
This is
through
wrong.
Parliament.
It's wrongful.
What can
It's
they
not
do?
right.
What are the options?
All right. We are young.
Well, I
We
mean,
need to
you know,
do things
Mamavi, this is not the first time we are hearing this. In the 6th Parliament and the parliaments before, I think we've heard this over and over and over again. I mean, a majority using its numbers to bulldoze situations where, I mean, important agreements are looked at by the House on the last day of Parliament, running in very late into the night, and so on. In situations where we know that our members of Parliament do not have all the necessary support that they need to scrutinize some of these things. I think that, honestly, our leadership, the leadership of Parliament, must, as a matter of national importance, have a discussion about some of these things, remembering that, you know, minorities change, and we are not going to have the MPP in majority forever. I mean, we are going to wake up someday and the NDC will be in majority. We don't want, I mean, repetitions of these things. If you go to the Hansard and you look at the records, you know, every time Parliament is about to rise, we have members sitting very late into the night. I mean, is it that the business committee doesn't plan well? Is it that sometimes Parliament cannot say, you know, these things have to wait until maybe the next time we come back and so on? But the one important comment that I want to make, and that I think is a call to you journalists. I think there's an argument about whether the two agreements are the same. I think you owe it a duty to all of us to put the two agreements in the public space so that at least let's see. Because the fact that the agreement has elapsed doesn't not necessarily mean that, you know, if the contents are the same, that there is no issue. So my point is that please do us a favor and let us see the two agreements, I mean, side by side.
Sure.
So that at least let Ghanaians be the judges.
Okay. Dr. RASHEED DRAMAN, thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure. Thank you very much. He's the Executive Director of the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. He knows our Parliament inside out and the rules of the House as well. So please, what's going to happen? Have you taken a decision in terms of the minority? Are you going to court?
Well, we have not considered that position yet.
But that's an option.
Yes, yes, to test whether or not.
How about petition to the Speaker?
No, it's not necessary. The deed has been done. So we have to determine whether or not the procedure that they use under Article 75, whether it's regular. That Article 75 didn't contemplate an executed agreement prior to seeking parliamentary ratification. You understand my point? So, we'll look at it and get to that bridge.
But this is worrying, you know, if you're bullied at the committee level, because that's where a lot of the work is done.
You see, Mama V, Kwejo and I, we are lawyers, we are young, we are in parliament. He may be in NPP, I may be in NDC, but we love intellectual exercise. We engage in it, even outside of the house, we debate, we talk. I would not be crying here today if I were given the opportunity to do that I voted and I lost. No problem. That's the essence of democracy.
Kojo, how do we correct that? Because we want
but the impression is being created.
We want a healthy,
when we rose
healthy
at 9
deliberation.
9 p.m.
We have to
9 p.m.
We have to tell the minority to play by the rules. He raised, and I respect a point he raised, that he thought we were in breach of Article 75 too. Now, when I leave here, I will share with you from my library legal precedent, that the route that was used is legal and is constitutional. However, if they are of the view, like he expressed when he had the opportunity to express, that it is unconstitutional, I encourage them to seek the interpretation of the Supreme Court.
We'll do so.
Not just to let it fly under the carpet, because we are clear in our mind that
I thought you were through.
all false. Finally, when I say that we should tell the minority to play by the rules, I say this with all seriousness. The minority in Parliament today is adopting a certain attitude that if they don't have their way, they will stampede the House. Today, when the minority leader rises on his feet, despite the rule that Mr. Speaker is the one who recognizes whoever is on his feet, the minority has taken a posture that when my very good friend Haruna Adiso rises on his feet and Mr. Speaker has not recognized him, they will create chaos in the House until he's recognized.
What we were told, but what we were told on, I think, on 2 occasions, that he rose for a really long time and he was not recognized.
It is immaterial. Let me tell you why it is immaterial. Let me tell you why it is immaterial. Listen, when you go to court or any chamber of law, no matter your substantive case, procedure cannot be thrown out. If you come by wrong procedure, your case will be thrown out. If you rise on your feet, and the rules of Parliament say, Mr. Speaker must recognize you, A. B. Mr. Speaker's ruling can only be challenged with substantive motion. You do not say that because I rose on my feet for a long time and he has not recognized me, we are going to drum, sing, cause chaos, switch on microphones so that nobody can speak in the chamber. What is happening to our democracy? If we want to proceed, we should tell our good friends in the minority, you may have a case, but play by the rules.
Okay, please quickly respond so we can go to the next matter.
In parliamentary democracy, when a leader is on his feet in the chamber, whatever is happening, the speaker, you ought to recognize that.
That's not true.
Please.
The rules are clear.
That's his view.
No, it's not his view, it's the rules. What would the rules say?
That is the procedure.
But what is standard practice? What has been the practice? What has been the practice?
You have had your take.
What has been the practice?
You see, that goes for an ordinary member. But when a minority leader...
Check the rules if that is in the rules.
When a minority leader rises and is on his feet, you ought to give him that respect.
Order what? Which order is this?
Practice.
Practice.
Which practice is this?
Please.
It is nowhere. They are trying to invent this practice.
Go and read the scheme.
I have read the scheme. That's why I have to
let's wrap up on this. Let's wrap up on this.
I am happy he's making these arguments. Tomorrow, if he becomes a minority leader in parliament, and I become the speaker, and he's on his feet for 30 minutes.
I'll keep a copy of this conversation.
And I don't recognize him.
I will resume my seat. I will resume my seat and then go out to the press and hold a press conference and show that the speaker has perhaps not been fair to me.
And that is what
but I will not breach the rules in the House. That's what they are doing now.
They do that to our
That's what they are doing now, and they must be called out for it.
We have just a little time to deal with this other matter. Fortunately, Kojo, you speak for government on economic issues. Yes. So and if you look at, I think, 2 of the main newspapers, that's the Daily Graphic and also the Final newspaper. It's here that we've piled up a lot more debts.
That the debt stock has gone up.
It is not hitting at us yet. So please explain.
So if you put the 2 reports together, our debt stock has gone up to about 142 billion. Remember, the IFS projected that they think it will hit 146, and I came out to explain that no, we don't think it will go above 142. Today the numbers are out. It hit 142.
0.5.
Yes, but the debt to GDP ratio, thankfully, has come down from 73.3% to 69.8. Quickly, let me explain. If I owe 4 million cedis and my debt even grows to 4.5 million cedis, you may look at that and say, well, your debt has gone up. But debt is always relative. So you look at, and that's a concept of debt to GDP ratio. You look at my debt vis-a-vis my total productivity. So for example, if I owe 4 million cedis and my total income is 10 million cedis, and my debt even rises to 4.5 million cedis, and my total income rises to 20 million cedis, you would notice that the impact of my debt on my productivity first perhaps has gone up, but most importantly, my debt sustainability, whether or not this debt is a risk, has come down. And that is why consistently, anytime we talk, if you read the President's State of the Nation address in February 2017, he says we've inherited 122 billion, which is equivalent to 73.3% of GDP. That is dangerous. We've crossed the 70% threshold. Our objective as a government is to come down. Today, thankfully, by virtue of a number of strategies we use, we've come down to 69.8. Our objective is to continue with that strategy and bring it down to about 65% in the medium term, so that the risk of debt distress is reduced. I think it is a good thing for Ghana. We should encourage government to do more of that.
So what is working well for us?
Two things. One, what we have done is to significantly slow down the rate at which we are accumulating debt. You'll notice if you read, for example, the IFS latest document on debt in Ghana, it talks about the fact that our most risky period was between 2012 and 2016, where we racked up 87 billion Ghana cedis extra debt. Indeed, the average was about 36% year-on-year growth in our debt.
I guess that's also because of the elections.
No, wasn't. From 2013, we were not voting. 2014, we were not voting. 2015, we were not voting. It was in 2016 that we had election. Consistently, you had, and this was because they were missing the deficit targets and racking up more debt on a day-to-day basis. Their explanation was that they were building infrastructure with it, but you couldn't see how GDP was growing at the time they were racking up that. Indeed, at the time they were racking up the GDP was coming down to about 3.6. What you now have in this instance is that in the year 2017, we significantly reduced the rate of debt accumulation from 36% to somewhere about 16%. Indeed, earlier in the year, we were sitting about 13. By the time the full numbers came in, about 16%. So we've reduced the rate of debt accumulation from the average 36 to about 16%. Number two, we have also done that by reducing the deficit. Remember in 2016, even under the IMF program, we were advised not to go beyond 5% deficit, because if you go beyond 5% deficit, you are racking up more debt. They ended with nearly 10%. For the first time since 2006,
would I have some time?
Yes,
of
I'll
course,
give you
we
time.
managed to reduce the deficit from that about 9 point something to 10% to about 6.3% in 2017. And this year we're going to bring it down further to 4.5%. So one, we have reduced the debt trajectory, bringing down the deficit, bringing down the rate at which debt is being accumulated. Two, we have also occasioned a significant boost in our GDP. Consequently, now if you compare the debt to the GDP, that's why you notice that the curve is coming down. What is important is that we speed up our efforts to bring it down to that about 65% in the medium term, so that the risk is reduced on us.
Okay. Sure, you totally disagree with him.
Mama V, this is a convoluted way of explaining the debt situation.
Okay.
And let me tell you, between March last year and now, they have racked up in excess of 35 billion Ghana cedis in terms of debt. The equivalent of $7.88 billion. They have nothing to show for it. Tell me, there's no investment in infrastructure. Very little. Ongoing road constructions have been halted. They claim they are reviewing the contracts. Nothing is happening. Education, they are not building any educational infrastructure.
But they started free SHS.
Why? Build infrastructure before you put the people in the school. They haven't done that. They haven't added 1 megawatt of power to the existing infrastructure. What are they doing? Now, on Friday, just Friday, they brought 3 facilities. We approved 1.3 billion for them. They are going to raise bonds. We approved another 1 billion. They claim they are going to fund the 2018 budget. we approve another 500 million Ghana cedis domestic borrowing in 1 day, please.
It's not domestic.
Oh,
It's
please.
no. I'm just correct. It's a global denominated note.
Very well. I saw a domestic borrowing.
No, it's denominated in domestic currency. That's the difference.
Okay. Now, in 1 day, Parliament approved this much. In January and February, they borrowed so much. But the trick is that for the first quarter borrowings, which is so much, they haven't added it up. He should tell me.
So that's why the figure is still at this point.
It is misleading. They will tell you that they speak of December. But we are in the first quarter. Speak of your borrowings in the first quarter, which is very, very excessive. So it is misleading for them to say that they did. Look, 69.8. You've done mathematics before. You've done statistics. Approximated, that is 70. When they came to Parliament and criticized us that we did this by 73.3 and said all sorts of things, I never knew they could hit 70.
But you were at 73%.
Why?
So even if you are
So what should the figure be?
You see,
per your...
It is much more.
It's not.
It is much more.
It's not.
You
This
see,
is your economic analysis.
No.
It's dangerous.
But it is not dangerous. I am making the argument so that the local man will understand.
It's dangerous.
What is it?
You are limiting the rate of borrowing to the end of year December 2017.
Mahavi, let me explain
And
to you
I'm
why
making
this
the
is
point
dangerous. Let me
that
explain to you why
Okay.
this
no,
is dangerous.
and I'm making the point that in the first quarter of this year, you have borrowed so much.
Okay, so
already.
let's just get this cleared up. Did you include what we've accumulated the first
Those
quarter of
figures
this
will
year?
come out by the end of the second quarter. Our statistics
Okay.
in this country are always 3 months behind. Let me explain to you.
Okay,
Why?
so he's
why
right
3
then.
months
You
behind?
remember that
So-
when the Minister of Finance
Why
read
3
the
months
budget,
behind?
That is, but
Why?
But you know that the Ghana
why?
Statistical
Why should
Service
it be 3 months
always
behind?
compiles data 3
Why?
months flat. May I speak?
So you agree that it is more than
No,
this?
no,
If
no,
you
no,
want
no,
to
no,
add
no,
that.
no, no,
much
it is
more.
not. It is
It
not.
is much
because,
more.
Listen, it is not. Because by the time you
Mama
calculate
V,
the
I'll
GDP,
put something out
by
today-
the time
today,
you
by
calculate
close
the
of today, I'll
GDP,
put something out
by
concerning
the
our public
time,
debt
by
stock.
the time you calculate the GDP for March, that GDP would have gone up higher. Then you compare that GDP to whatever the debt stock is. You remember that when the finance minister read the budget came to give an update on the budget in June, and he gave us the trend for the debt to GDP ratio. My brother Isaac Adongo said, no, the latest borrowings have to be factored. They've been factored in it now, and it's now sitting at 69.8. He makes the point that Friday we came to Parliament with 3 papers. It's true. First of all, it wasn't 1.3, it was $1.5 billion to swap your 10% Eurobond that you did. Because
Why?
today we are having better
Why?
rates.
You
If
are
the old
saying-
rate was 10%,
Bakajo, whichever way you look at it,
That
we're
one doesn't
still,
add-
we're
no,
still
no.
spending a lot more
No,
now, right?
no.
We're still borrowing.
We're still.
Give me a few
Borrowing
minutes to explain.
incredibly.
You went to
I-
borrow 1.7 billion. Just let me explain. 1.7 billion
Yes.
at 10%.
Yes.
Because of the risks that people saw with the economy, they charge you 10%. Today, they have brought the rates down. You've heard Moody's, etc., saying that, okay, Ghana, we don't need to charge you more than about 8%, etc. We are of the view that we can take a 1.5% billion Eurobond at 8% thereabout and swap for your 10% and save the Ghanaian too. That money doesn't add to our debt stock.
Why?
I want
It doesn't,
to bring
because
back.
it's a debt swap.
Why?
It's a
Why
debt
is
swap.
it a debt swap?
I
It's
want
a
to bring
swap
back-
of your
It's a
Eurobond.
borrow.
I
No,
want
no,
to
no.
bring back something that Dr. Baumia said.
Yes.
Some
Said the
years
money's
back.
here.
Yeah.
And I want us to explain what
Yes.
is happening now. What's different? What he said then, I think back in 3-4 years ago.
But let me respond to
Yeah.
this just before
So-
you play that. Let me just respond to this because he has created a wrong
have-
impression.
you have responded already.
1.5 billion is a swap. The 500 million Ghana cedis is also a swap. Just that we are not taking it on the local market, we are taking it on the external market.
swap of
that,
what?
Of your old CD
You
denominated
see,
debts on the market.
Isn't
these
that
two-
a bit
This is the
complicated?
English
It's
they
not.
they
Listen to
employ.
me. No,
You
no,
go
no.
and borrow and say you are swapping.
No. Listen. Anybody who wants to understand this can understand it. You borrowed 1.7 billion at 10.5. Today the rate is better
You see,
for us.
but,
so
but
I am taking
you have forgotten
1.5.
that we are already
If I
paying
may.
interest on those borrowings.
Yes, and
So
I want
when
to
say-
save. I want to save a bit of the
How?
interest. You're going to be paying these rates.
How?
I want to save a bit of the interest. So if I can now get
My
a new
brother, you are
lender,
borrowing.
no.
You are
If I
just
can get a new
borrowing.
lender to give me
are just
1.5,
borrowing.
may I? If I may get a new lender to give me 1.5 at a cheaper rate, I can swap the old.
But what
debt
it means is that we're
with
still borrowing more.
It means
Thank
we are
you.
not adding to
Thank
our debt
you.
stock. Mama, we are not borrowing more. The new borrowing, where I agree with you,
you heard them
is
say
the
that
1
they were
billion.
not adding to
Let's-
You want us to explain?
They
Let's
said,
explain.
Yes, yes,
they
yes,
said they
yes.
were doing
Maybe let me show you
Please,
where we are
so they were
borrowing.
not
Please,
adding to
Let
that
me show
stock.
you where we are
Kindly
borrowing.
land so that I can
Yes,
play
but
Dr.
it is a
Baumia.
matter of fact that this 1.5 billion and the 500 million Ghana cedis don't add to they are not new borrowings, they
Okay.
are debt swaps.
All right.
The new borrowing is the 1 billion.
I see.
Okay, that's a 1 billion.
To fund your budget.
Yes, 4.7 billion cedis. Go and look in our budget. All that borrowing comes up to 4.5% of GDP. Yours was 10%.
Kojo, you borrowed.
let's
So we
listen
have
to-
borrowed down.
let's-
That is why you are seeing the debt to
You
GDP
borrowed in
ratio
January.
Let's
coming
listen
to
to-
69%.
I'll bring you all
Let's
the,
listen to
That's
Dr.
why you see it
Baumia,
coming
and then
down.
we'll wrap up on
Luckily,
this.
they bring
Please.
all
Oxen,
to
look at the
Parliament.
numbers.
I'll bring you the other
Look at the
papers.
numbers.
In January, they borrowed.
The numbers
in
don't
February,
lie.
they borrowed.
Here
The
we go.
numbers don't
In
lie.
March, they
Ghana's total external debt has increased from 3.9 billion at the end of 2008 to 7.1 billion in 2011. That is external debt, an increase of 82% in 3 years. This does not include the China loan of 3 billion. In just the last 3 years, ladies and gentlemen, Ghana's total public debt, just the last 3 years, has increased. The total public debt, just look at where it was in 2008. The total debt, which is domestic debt and external debt together, our total public debt has increased from 9 billion Ghana cedis to 25 billion Ghana cedis. In just 3 years, 164% increase. What is mind-boggling, Mr. Chairman, is that even after adjusting for HIPIC, the stock of public debt that has been accumulated over the last 3 years alone is higher than the total stock of debt accumulated by all other governments since independence to 2008. The government has accumulated more debt in 3 years than all governments have done in 52 years. And this is what is worrying. What is increasingly clear is that corruption in Ghana is on the increase, as documented by the worsening performance in the Corruption Perception Index published by Transparency International. The overpricing.
So that's Dr. Baumia. This was way back in 2012. Remember, he started a number of lectures
This is 2016.
on
2016.
this is 26. Okay, on debts profiling.
Yes.
And you know, the question that I want to ask is, should we, considering the fact that we will continue to borrow, should we be politicizing this issue? We will definitely go out there.
The question of debt sustainability will always be politicized. But for example, like Dr. Dramani said before he left, you, the media, for example, take an interest in the numbers and tell us whether the debt to GDP ratio is coming down or not.
Pass our bill for us so that the work will be easy.
It's in Parliament, it will be passed. But even these data, all of this data is being published. It's a matter of interrogating the data and putting it out, because this data is already available. You don't need RTI to get this one, but we'll still pass RTI. For example, people ask, so what have you done so far? You have added new debt, but we haven't seen roads, etc. When you were building roads, etc., your GDP was coming down to 3.6. We are using the money prudently. Remember today, the national health insurance that you had left after your borrowing, you left 1.6 billion debt. We are left with just about 200 million debt to pay, and we are not in arrears.
Go and check the NHI
Remember,
issues.
contractors, we have paid over 3.6 billion.
Please let him land so that I can come to you. I don't have a lot
You
of
were issuing
time.
ID cards and racking up a bill of 1.6 billion, and you were borrowing, and you claimed you were using it for something prudent. We have been able to pay down that debt. We are left with just about 200 million to pay. Go to the contractors that you say we should pay. We've paid about 3.6 billion so far. And when we audited, about 5.4 billion, which if we hadn't audited, people would have come to take that money. By now, people will be holding parties and having fun for work not done. So, Mama, we are using every single CD prudently. Okay. That is why you see an uptick in all the major macro indices. The important thing is to continue at this rate, working hard, bringing in the revenue, making sure that it doesn't leak, making sure that the GDP continues to grow, not just grow, but expand, so that a lot of people who are still unemployed will get jobs
Wilson, I'll give
and
you the
move
final
forward.
say. A minute.
Omavi, They haven't created any employment, number one. What they have done is to sack half of Ghanaians. All right? They are not even employing the persons to replace those that they have sacked. So they have constricted the public service. They reduced their numbers. 2.
By how much?
Why?
By how much?
I'll give you the figures.
You've thrown it out there.
No, the number.
This is what they do. He has thrown it out there. They have reduced half of Ghana's workers.
No,
you just
Friday,
said it.
Friday.
They have reduced half of Ghana's workers.
Dismissed a lot
how
of
many
people.
are that half?
Friday.
A lot of people is about to how many?
Friday, you
How
have
many?
dismissed 45 zonal coordinators of
and that is
school
half
feeding
of
program
Ghana's
alone.
workers.
Alone.
That is half of
Why?
Ghana's workers.
We'll give you the figures, the number of people you have dismissed that they should go home.
Perhaps they were not performing.
Why? Non-performance. Who did the performance
If
appraisal?
anybody has been dismissed
Who
wrongly,
did
that
the
person has
performance
recourse.
appraisal? Mama, tell me. 2. The review that they claim that they did. If I have paid you as a contractor and I've left government and you have come and somebody in the public service, including your own ministers, okay, those outstandings for you to pay, do you blame me?
So why are you shouting pay the contractors?
Why? Why
you wanted
wouldn't
us
you
to
pay
pay
them?
that 5.4 billion
No,
for people
I
to
am
go
not-
and enjoy
it is
for
your
work
own-
not
it is
done?
persons in your own government
You should be
who okay
praising
that
the
for-
Auditor
for
General
payment.
and the Finance
Please land
Minister
for me.
Right?
for
It is-
preventing this
look,
leakage.
a lot of them were okay by your own ministers.
Disappointing.
So your own minister should be going home or should be facing the office of the special prosecutor by now. Because they okayed it and sent it to Ministry of Finance
wanted us
for
to pay
payment.
the 5.4 billion.
You brought it
So
up.
that people
Your own
who hadn't
colleagues-
done any
your
work
own
for the
colleagues-
state
I would like to say
would
thank
benefit
you.
from
Thank
that
you
work
to
for
the
work
two of
they
you
hadn't done.
for being on
This
the
is
show
why
this
you
morning.
were borrowing and the GDP was
No,
coming down.
your own colleagues
Because when you were
that talk
borrowing,
that
you were paying people who hadn't done any work.
No.
And you were telling us that you were doing infrastructure, and yet the GDP was coming down. And yet the GDP was coming down.
We have to end it here.
The GDP
Thank
was
you,
coming down,
gentlemen,
Roxanne.
for your time this morning. We will see the
We
next
always talk
action
about
that the
GDP. As for
minority,
GDP, that is, it
the
doesn't
minority
reflect the
will take.
pockets of
It does.
the people
It
here.
does.
It does
It
not.
Thank you for your time on the show.
It
Stay
does.
with
It's
us.
our
We
pleasure,
have
Mama.
more
It does.
coming
It's
your
our
way.
pleasure.